With her last bullet lodged in the chamber and blood seeping through her tactical vest, Sergeant Maya Reynolds stared through her scope at the advancing insurgents. 20 hours ago, she had been the only survivor of a devastating explosion that had scattered her reconnaissance unit across the mountainous terrain of eastern Afghanistan and left a 3-star general missing. Now, as dawn threatened to expose her position, she had a decision to make that would either cement her place in Marine Corps' history or end with her name on a memorial wall back home. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The mission had been classified from the start. General James Harrington, commander of special operations in the region, had insisted on personally overseeing a meeting with local tribal leaders. Intelligence suggested a breakthrough in tracking high-value targets was imminent. Maya's team, despite her exceptional record as a scout sniper with 2 tours already completed, had initially been assigned merely as distant perimeter security. The brass still hesitated to place female Marines at the tip of the spear, regardless of their qualifications. "I need your eyes on Overwatch, Reynolds. Nothing more," Captain Mitchell had emphasized during the briefing, avoiding her gaze as he assigned the prime security positions to her male counterparts. "The General's convoy is high value. We can't afford any mistakes." Maya had swallowed her frustration, a familiar taste after 8 years of proving herself only to be relegated to secondary positions when prime assignments arose. Her spotting skills were unmatched in the battalion. Her ability to read terrain, track movement patterns, and anticipate threats had saved countless lives. Yet the combat exclusion policy, though officially lifted, still haunted operational decisions like an unwelcome ghost. "Understood, sir," she had replied, her face a mask of professional neutrality while her mind calculated alternative vantage points that might actually prove more tactically sound than those assigned to her counterparts. She knew the area better than anyone. Her previous tour had been spent entirely in this province, learning its treacherous contours and fickle weather patterns. The convoy had departed before dawn, 6 armored vehicles moving through territory that oscillated between cautious alliance and outright hostility. Maya and her spotter, Corporal Jackson, had taken position on a rocky outcropping that provided a commanding view of the valley approach. The meeting point was a village elder's compound approximately 3 kilometers from their position. "I still think we should have pushed for closer positioning," Jackson muttered as they settled into their observation post. At 22, he was 5 years her junior but had quickly proven himself as an exceptional spotter and one of the few men in the unit who judged her solely on her abilities. "Mitchell's playing it by the book," Maya replied, her eyes never leaving her sector as she documented movement patterns through the scope of her M4 OF5 rifle. "General's presence has everyone walking on eggshells." What neither of them knew was that the operation had been compromised days earlier. Someone had leaked the General's route, the meeting location, and the security protocols. The attack, when it came, was devastatingly precise. The first explosion tore through the lead vehicle as the convoy approached the village. The second and third detonated simultaneously, cutting off any retreat. The radio erupted with frantic calls as Maya watched black smoke billow into the clear morning sky. "Sierra Actual, this is Overwatch 1. Convoy hit, multiple explosions. Cannot verify casualties from current position," she reported, already packing her gear. "Requesting permission to reposition for better assessment and possible support." Captain Mitchell's voice crackled through the static. "Negative, Overwatch 1. Maintain position. QRF is inbound, ETA 15 minutes. Maya exchanged a look with Jackson. 15 minutes was an eternity. The remaining convoy vehicles were taking heavy fire from multiple positions. "With respect, sir, we can reach the high ground overlooking the ambush site in 8 minutes. We'll have eyes on the entire situation, and can direct the QRF more effectively when they arrive. A moment of hesitation before Mitchell responded. Proceed with caution, Overwatch 1. Report what you see. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary. They moved with practiced efficiency, covering ground rapidly while maintaining awareness of their surroundings. The terrain was treacherous loose shale on steep inclines, sparse vegetation offering minimal concealment. They reached the new position in just under 7 minutes, dropping into prone positions behind a natural rock formation that provided both cover and a clear line of sight. What they witnessed was chaos. 2 vehicles were burning furiously. The others had formed a hasty defensive perimeter, but they were taking fire from at least 3 different positions. Maya could see wounded Marines being dragged to cover behind the intact vehicles. Sierra Actual, Overwatch 1. We have eyes on. 2 vehicles destroyed, remaining 3 under heavy fire from multiple positions. She provided precise coordinates for each enemy position she could identify. No visual on the HVT. Approximately 15 to 20 hostiles, well armed, using coordinated fire and maneuver tactics. These aren't standard Taliban. They're too disciplined. Understood, Overwatch 1. QRF is 10 minutes out. Continue to observe and report. Maya scanned methodically through her scope, cataloging threats, identifying patterns, searching for the specialized team that would be targeting the general specifically. They're a 4-man element moving with purposeful precision toward the vehicle where the general had likely been riding. Their movements were too professional, too measured to be typical insurgents. Jackson, I've got a specialized team moving on what's probably the general's position. Bearing 213, using the dry streamed for cover. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Before Jackson could respond, a massive explosion rocked their position. The shock wave rolled up the hillside, sending cascades of loose rock tumbling down the slope. One of the armored vehicles had been hit by what must have been an RPG, and the resulting detonation was catastrophic. The blast wave knocked both Marines back from their observation point. Maya's head struck rock as she tumbled, her world momentarily going dark. When consciousness returned seconds later, her ears were ringing, and warm blood trickled down her face. She reached for Jackson, only to find empty space where he had been. "Jackson!" she called, fighting to reorient herself. The world tilted and swayed as she crawled back to their position. Through the settling dust, she saw him, his body sprawled awkwardly 15 meters down the slope, unnaturally still against the rocky ground. With trained discipline overriding personal shock, Maya checked her weapon, secured her equipment, and assessed the situation. The explosion had triggered a landslide directly beneath their position, carrying Jackson down the hillside and exposing her location. Below, the attack continued unabated. The QRF was still minutes away, and the specialized team she had spotted was nearly at the general's vehicle. She had 3 choices: retreat to safer ground and wait for reinforcements, attempt to reach Jackson and provide aid, or use her current position to engage the enemy and buy time for the surviving convoy members. The decision crystallized with cold clarity. Jackson was almost certainly dead. Retreating meant abandoning the Marines below, and the general was moments from capture or execution. Maya steadied her breathing, aligned her scope, and prepared to engage. The first shot dropped the lead man of the specialized team, the sound of her rifle momentarily lost in the cacophony of the ongoing battle. The remaining 3 immediately sought cover, their practiced response confirming her suspicion about their training level. Her second and third shots forced them further into defensive positions, disrupting their advance. Through her scope, she saw confusion among the general's security detail as they tried to identify the new shooter. She keyed her radio. "Sierra Actual, Overwatch 1. I am engaging a specialized enemy team attempting to reach the HVT. Corporal Jackson is down. Request immediate QRF priority to my position. Captain Mitchell's voice came through, tight with tension. Copy, Overwatch 1. Continue to engage. Be advised we've lost contact with the General Security Team. Status of the HVT is unknown. The implication was clear. General Harrington was either dead, captured, or missing in the chaos. Maya methodically continued to engage targets, forcing the attacking forces to divide their attention. She changed position slightly after every few shots, creating the impression of multiple shooters. For 8 crucial minutes, she maintained pressure, allowing the remaining Marines in the convoy to consolidate their position and tend to their wounded. The QRF arrived with a thunder of helicopter rotors, forcing the attackers to break contact and withdraw. Maya maintained her vigilance as medical evacuation teams moved in to retrieve the wounded. She spotted movement, a small group of 3 fighters moving away from the battlefield with a 4th figure in tow. The 4th was wearing fragments of a Marine Corps uniform. Through her scope, she could make out the silver stars of a general's rank. Her radio crackled. All units, be advised. General Harrington is confirmed missing. Repeat, our HVT is missing in action. All available assets prioritize location and recovery. Maya keyed her radio. Sierra Actual, Overwatch 1. I have visual on 3 hostiles escorting what appears to be General Harrington, moving northeast through the drainage canal. Approximately 800 meters from the ambush site. Copy, Overwatch 1. Can you maintain visual? Affirmative, but they're moving quickly. They'll reach the cover of the eastern ridge in approximately 2 minutes. Stand by, Overwatch 1. Maya continued to track the group through her scope. They were moving with purpose, clearly executing a pre-planned extraction. The terrain would soon provide them perfect cover for a vehicle extraction or movement to a prepared hideout. The decision window was closing rapidly. Captain Mitchell's voice returned. Overwatch 1, QRF assets are fully engaged with casualty evacuation. We cannot redirect air support in time. You are authorized to engage if you have a clear shot, but primary mission is to maintain visual and track their movement. Maya steadied her breathing. 800 meters, slight crosswind, declining elevation, a challenging shot but within her capabilities. She could potentially neutralize 1, maybe 2 of the captors, but that risked the general's life. The smarter play was to follow Mitchell's order, track their movement, and guide a recovery team later. But something didn't add up. This group was moving too confidently, too directly. Most kidnapping operations in this region involved multiple handoffs, circuitous routes, confusion tactics. These men had a specific destination and were moving straight toward it. They're heading for immediate exfiltration, she muttered to herself. Once they're in a vehicle, we'll lose them. Maya made her decision. She steadied her rifle, calculated for distance and wind, and exhaled slowly. Her target was not the captors, but the narrow path ahead of them. Her first shot struck the rock face just above the path, sending fragments and dust cascading down. The group halted, momentarily confused. Her second shot struck directly in front of them, forcing them to retreat several steps. The goal wasn't to hit them, but to delay them, to buy precious minutes for air assets to be redirected. For 4 critical minutes, she used precisely placed shots to herd them away from their intended route, forcing them to seek alternate paths that exposed them longer to aerial observation. Her tactic worked. The distinctive sound of an Apache attack helicopter approached from the south. The QRF had managed to divert air support after all. As the helicopter appeared over the ridgeline, the captors made a desperate decision. 2 broke away with the general, heading for deeper cover, while the 3rd turned and began firing up toward Maya's position, having finally identified her location. The first rounds impacted 3 meters to her right, showering her with rock fragments. She shifted position immediately, but the next burst came closer, forcing her to roll behind larger cover. When she repositioned to re-engage, the Apache had already launched a missile strike on the lone shooter, and the remaining captors had disappeared with General Harrington into a network of caves that riddled the eastern ridge. Maya reported the development, then began the treacherous descent to check on Jackson. She found him as she had feared. The fall had broken his neck. With mechanical precision born of too much practice, she collected his dog tags, secured his weapon, and called in his position for later recovery. There was no time for grief, yet the mission parameters had shifted. And somewhere in those caves was a 3-star general whose knowledge of ongoing operations made him perhaps the most valuable prisoner the enemy could hope to capture. As the sun climbed higher, casting harsh shadows across the valley, Maya made her way toward the QRF's command post that had been hastily established near the ambush site. Captain Mitchell was coordinating with the Apache pilots, trying to maintain visual on the cave entrances while awaiting reinforcements. "Reynolds," he acknowledged as she approached, his expression grave. "Good work delaying them. We've got 2 platoons inbound to establish a perimeter around those caves, but it's a complex network. Intel says it could connect to dozens of exit points across 5 square kilometers. Sir, request permission to establish an observation post on the northeast ridge," Maya said. "I know these mountains. During my last tour, we mapped several of those cave systems. The main exit points follow predictable patterns based on groundwater flow. I can narrow the search grid significantly." Mitchell hesitated, clearly weighing operational necessity against protocol. "You're our best set of eyes, Reynolds, but you've been in continuous operation for over 12 hours, and you took a hit in that explosion." Maya stood straighter. "With respect, sir, every minute counts. The longer we delay, the further they can move the general through those caves. I'm fully operational." After a moment's consideration, Mitchell nodded. "Take Sanchez and Wilkins for support. Establish your op and report any movement. Do not, I repeat, do not attempt to engage or pursue without backup." "That's a direct order." "Understood, sir." Within 30 minutes, Maya had led her new team to a concealed position overlooking the 3 most likely exit points from the cave system. The afternoon stretched into evening as they maintained their vigilant watch, coordinating with other observation teams positioned around the perimeter. Intelligence analysts were hurriedly processing satellite imagery and drone footage, searching for any sign of the captors and their high-value prisoner. As darkness fell, thermal imaging became their primary tool. But the caves offered perfect counters to this technology: the thick rock masked heat signatures, and the numerous small wildlife creatures created constant false positives on their screens. "They'll move him tonight," Maya said as she scanned a particular ravine for the 3rd time. "If I were running their operation, I'd wait until full darkness, then move him through this drainage channel. It provides cover from aerial observation, and the terrain is too rough for vehicles to pursue effectively." Sanchez, a veteran of 3 tours himself, nodded in agreement. "They've got to know we've established a perimeter. They'll try to slip through the smallest gap in our coverage." At 2,200 hours, Captain Mitchell's voice came through their comms. "All OPs be advised. Drone surveillance has detected multiple heat signatures approaching cave exit points. They're attempting to probe our perimeter. Maintain absolute noise and light discipline. Report any visual confirmation, but do not engage unless directly threatened." For the next hour, the night erupted in sporadic exchanges of gunfire as the enemy tested different points along the established perimeter. The strategy was clear: create confusion, divide attention, then slip the high-value target through during the chaos. Maya maintained her focus on the drainage channel, trust in her instinct that this would be their true exfiltration route. The distinctive crack of AK-47s echoed from the western perimeter, followed by the controlled response of Marine M4S, another diversionary attack she assessed the 3rd in the past hour. Then she saw a brief flicker of movement in her night vision scope. 3 figures moving with careful precision down the drainage channel, using the natural contours for concealment. The lead figure moved with the practiced grace of someone with extensive special operations training. The second was clearly the general, even in the green haze of night vision. The slight stoop of his shoulders and his height were distinctive. The third moved with the vigilant attention of a rear guard, frequently pausing to check their back trail. "Sierra Actual, Overwatch 3, Maya whispered into her com. "I have visual confirmation. 3 individuals moving through the eastern drainage channel. One appears to be the HVT. They're approximately 800 meters from my position, moving north-northeast. Copy, Overwatch 3, maintain visual. QRF element is repositioning to your coordinates. ETA 12 minutes. Maya continued to track their movement, noting how they used the terrain with expert knowledge. These weren't standard fighters. They moved like men with formal military training, possibly former special forces who had joined or been hired by the insurgency. The lead captor suddenly halted, raising a fist in the universal military signal to stop. Through her scope, Maya could see him studying something in the distance. He turned to confer with his companion, then made a decisive gesture. They were changing course, moving toward a steeper, more challenging route that would take them away from the drainage channel but potentially through a gap in the perimeter coverage. "Sierra Actual, targets are changing direction. They're heading toward the northeast ravine, moving away from our established perimeter points. Copy, Overwatch 3. Can you maintain visual if they continue on that route?" Maya quickly calculated angles and terrain features. "Negative, sir. In approximately 2 minutes, they'll drop below my line of sight into the ravine system. We'll lose them completely." A moment of silence before Mitchell responded. "Understood. QRF is still 8 minutes out. You're authorized to reposition to maintain visual, but maintain safe distance. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary." "Copy that," Maya acknowledged, already motioning to Sanchez and Wilkins to prepare to move. They gathered their gear with practiced efficiency, then began making their way along the ridgeline, paralleling the captor's movement while maintaining the high ground advantage. The terrain was treacherous in the darkness, loose rock, steep drop-offs, sparse vegetation offering minimal handholds. They moved as quickly as safety allowed, but the captors below were making surprisingly good time given that they were managing a prisoner. Maya led her team to a promontory that jutted out over the ravine, offering a clear view of the path below. They settled into position just as the captors and the general came into view. Through her scope, Maya could now see the general more clearly. His uniform was torn, and dried blood had crusted on his temple, but he was moving under his own power. No obvious signs of severe injury. "Sierra Actual, I have reacquired visual on the targets. General Harrington appears to be ambulatory with minor injuries. They're continuing northeast toward..." She stopped abruptly, focusing her scope on a new development. "Sir, I can see what appears to be a vehicle waiting approximately 500 meters ahead. Lights off, positioned beside what looks like a goat path that could connect to a larger road network. Can you identify the vehicle type?" "Appears to be a Toyota Hilux modified for off-road use. Common insurgent transport in this region." Captain Mitchell's voice took on new urgency. "Overwatch 3, if they reach that vehicle, we'll lose them completely. QRF is still 5 minutes out. You're authorized to take action to delay their progress, but priority remains the safety of the HVT." Maya calculated rapidly. A direct engagement risked the general's life. The captors would almost certainly use him as a shield or simply execute him rather than risk his rescue. She needed a solution that would delay without endangering the general. "Sanchez, give me your claymore," she said, extending her hand while maintaining her observation. "You're not thinking of, 'I'm not going to hit them directly,'" she interrupted. I need to disable that vehicle without alerting the captors that we're onto them. Understanding dawned on Sanchez's face as he handed over the mine. You'll only get one shot at this. One shot is all I need, Maya replied, already preparing to move. Maintain observation and keep Mitchell updated. I'll be back in 15 minutes. Before either of her teammates could object, Maya was moving down the ridge, using a goat trail that ran parallel to but above the captor's path. Years of specialized training in mountain warfare allowed her to move with surprising speed despite the dangerous terrain and limited visibility. She circled wide, using the contours of the land to shield her approach to the waiting vehicle. Two men stood beside it, occasionally checking their watches and scanning the darkness with night vision goggles. Security for the extraction. Maya approached from the blind side of the vehicle, using a shallow depression in the ground to crawl the final 50 meters. The Claymore mine was designed for anti-personnel use, but correctly positioned, it could disable the vehicle just as effectively. With careful movements, she placed it beneath the rear axle, angled to direct its blast upward into the vehicle's undercarriage rather than outward, where it might hit the approaching captors. She set the detonator for remote triggering, then retreated to a covered position approximately 100 meters away, maintaining sight of both the vehicle and the path where the captors would approach. Through her scope, she could see they were now less than 3 minutes from reaching the extraction point. Sierra Actual, Overwatch 3 Alpha, she whispered into her com. I've placed a disabling charge on the extraction vehicle. 2 hostiles providing security. Captors with the HVT are approximately 3 minutes from the rendezvous point. Mitchell's response was immediate. What's your plan, Reynolds? Wait until they're committed to the open ground near the vehicle, then disable their transportation. They'll be forced to either retreat to the caves or continue on foot. Either way, it buys time for the QRF to intercept. QRF ETA, now 3 minutes. Execute when ready, but minimize risk to the HVT. Maya maintained her surveillance as the captors in general. Harrington emerged from the ravine and began crossing the small open area toward the waiting vehicle. The security team moved forward to meet them, one man opening the rear door in preparation. The moment of maximum vulnerability arrived. All 5 hostiles and the general were in the open, committed to the extraction point with no immediate cover available. Maya pressed the detonator. The Claymore exploded with a thunderous crack, its force directed upward into the vehicle's undercarriage. The blast shattered the rear axle, blew out the tires, and ruptured the fuel tank, which immediately ignited in a secondary explosion that engulfed the vehicle in flames. The effect was instantaneous. The security team and captors dropped to prone positions, disoriented by the unexpected attack. The general, showing the presence of mind that had earned him his rank, immediately rolled away from his captors, putting distance between himself and the men who had been holding him. Maya had already shifted position and was acquiring targets through her rifle scope. The security team recovered first, raising their weapons to scan for the source of the attack. She took out the first man with a precise shot to the chest, then adjusted to the second, who fell a moment later. The original captors were now scrambling for cover, dragging the general with them. Maya held her fire, unwilling to risk hitting Harrington in the chaotic movement. Instead, she used carefully placed shots to impact the ground near them, forcing them to change direction and further delaying their retreat. The distinctive sound of helicopter rotors announced the arrival of the QRF. Spotlights stabbed down from the darkness, illuminating the scene below. One of the captors raised his weapon toward the helicopter, only to be cut down by fire from the door gunner. The remaining 2 captors made a final desperate decision. One grabbed the general, placing a pistol to his head, while the other provided covering fire toward the helicopter. Their message was clear: back off, or the general dies. Maya steadied her breathing, centering her crosshairs on the head of the man holding General Harrington. It was an almost impossible shot, the distance, the darkness, the risk to the hostage all made it something most snipers would never attempt. But Maya wasn't most snipers. She exhaled slowly, squeezing the trigger at the precise moment between heartbeats. The shot cracked through the night, followed by a moment of absolute stillness. Then the captor crumpled, the pistol falling from his lifeless hand. The general immediately dropped to the ground, leaving the final captor exposed. Before he could react, concentrated fire from the helicopter eliminated the threat. Within moments, QRF operators had fast-roped to the ground, secured the general, and established a defensive perimeter. Maya maintained her position, scanning for any additional threats until she received confirmation that the area was secure. Only then did she key her radio. Sierra Actual, Overwatch 3 Alpha. HVT is secure. Area appears clear of additional hostiles. Outstanding work, Reynolds, Mitchell's voice came back, uncharacteristic emotion bleeding through his professional tone. Return to the rally point for exfiltration. As dawn broke over the mountains, Maya stood before Captain Mitchell and a hastily assembled group of senior officers. Her uniform was still stained with blood and dust from the previous day's fighting. Behind them, medical personnel were preparing General Harrington for evacuation to a field hospital. Despite his ordeal, the general had insisted on delaying his departure long enough to address the situation personally. Sergeant Reynolds, Mitchell began formally. General Harrington would like a word. The general approached, his uniform torn and bloodied, but his bearing unmistakably that of a senior commander. He studied Maya's face for a moment before speaking. Captain Mitchell tells me you're responsible for tracking and ultimately rescuing me from captivity, he said, his voice rough from exhaustion but clear. It was a team effort, sir, Maya responded automatically. Yes, it always is, Harrington agreed. But Mitchell was quite specific about your role. That final shot, the one that took out the man holding me, was something extraordinary. Most snipers wouldn't have attempted it. Maya maintained her professional demeanor. I had a clear shot, sir. The general's mouth quirked in what might have been a smile. He turned back to Maya. The intelligence I was gathering could significantly impact operations throughout this region. Had I been successfully extracted by those men, the consequences would have been severe. Your actions prevented that outcome. Thank you, sir, Maya said, maintaining her composure despite the exhaustion threatening to overwhelm her. No, Sergeant. Thank you. The general's expression became more serious. I'll be making formal recommendations regarding your actions once I return to headquarters. In the meantime, I believe certain operational protocols regarding assignment of personnel based on gender rather than qualification may need immediate revision. He extended his hand, which Maya shook firmly. We need our best people in the most critical positions, Sergeant Reynolds. Yesterday proved beyond any doubt that you are among our best. As the general was led away to the waiting medical evacuation helicopter, Captain Mitchell turned to Maya. His expression was complex, professional respect warring with the lingering effects of institutional bias. Get some rest, Reynolds, he said finally. You've earned it. When you're recovered, we'll discuss your next assignment. Sir, Maya replied, coming to attention as Mitchell walked away. Only then did she allow herself to feel the full weight of the past 24 hours, the loss of Jackson, the desperate tracking through hostile territory, the final impossible shot that had saved a general's life and possibly altered the course of female Marines in combat roles forever. As the sun climbed higher over the mountains, casting long shadows across the valley where so much had been lost and won, Maya knew that something fundamental had changed. Her actions hadn't just saved lives, they had demonstrated beyond any doubt that courage, skill, and determination recognized no gender boundaries. The true measure of a Marine was not found in policy manuals or traditional assumptions, but in the critical moments when everything depended on doing the impossible. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new missions, new opportunities to prove herself. But for today, it was enough to know that when faced with the ultimate test, she had not been found wanting. And perhaps, because of that, others like her would face fewer obstacles on the path ahead. The ground swayed beneath Maya's boots as she half staggered toward the field medical tent. 26 hours without sleep, combined with the adrenaline crash and the concussive effects of yesterday's explosion, had finally caught up with her. A medic intercepted her before she could reach her assigned cot. "You need to let me check that head wound, Sergeant," the medic said, guiding her to an examination table. "You've been bleeding through that bandage for hours." "It's nothing," Maya replied automatically, though she didn't resist as the medic began cleaning the gash that ran along her temple. "Just a scratch from when the observation post was hit." "A scratch that needs 12 stitches," the medic corrected, already preparing a suture kit. "And you've got a mild concussion. I'm surprised you were able to function at all, let alone pull off what everyone's talking about." Maya winced as the local anesthetic was injected around the wound. "What exactly is everyone talking about?" The medic gave her a look of disbelief. "The shot, Sergeant. 800 meters at night, with a hostage situation and a concussion. They're already calling it the Harrington miracle around base." "It wasn't a miracle," Maya said quietly. "It was training and opportunity." As the medic worked, Maya closed her eyes, the events of the past day replaying behind her eyelids in vivid detail. The ambush, Jackson's death, the desperate tracking through the mountains, and that final impossible moment when everything had hinged on a single bullet finding its mark in the darkness. She hadn't had time to process any of it until now. "There," the medic said, applying a fresh dressing to her newly stitched wound. "You're ordered to rest for at least 12 hours, Sergeant." Doctor's orders, backed by Captain Mitchell himself. Maya nodded, not bothering to argue. She made her way to the designated recovery tent and collapsed onto a cot, still fully dressed except for her boots. Sleep claimed her instantly, but it was far from peaceful. Her dreams were filled with explosions, the sightless eyes of her fallen spotter, and the moment when the general's life had balanced on the edge of her trigger. She woke with a jolt, disoriented until her surroundings came into focus. The recovery tent was quiet, with only a few other occupied cots. Pale light filtered through the canvas dawn was breaking. She had slept for nearly 14 hours. A corporal approached her cot, carrying a sealed envelope. "Sergeant Reynolds, this just came in for you. Priority message." Maya accepted the envelope with a murmured thanks, noting the official seal of the Marine Corps' Special Operations Command. Inside was a brief message ordering her to report to the command center at 0800 hours for debriefing and reassignment. She took a moment to clean up in the field shower facilities, changing into the fresh uniform someone had thoughtfully left by her cot. Her reflection in the small mirror showed a face she barely recognized pale beneath her tan, with dark circles under her eyes and the fresh dressing stark white against her skin. But her eyes were clear and focused. Whatever came next, she was ready to face it. The command center was a flurry of activity when she arrived precisely at 800. Tactical displays showed ongoing operations across the region. Communications officers relayed orders to units in the field, and intelligence analysts pored over satellite imagery and intercepted communications. Captain Mitchell spotted her and motioned her toward a side room, where a group of senior officers were gathered around a table. As she approached, she recognized General Harrington among them, looking remarkably recovered despite his ordeal. "Sergeant Reynolds reporting as ordered, sir," she said, coming to attention. Mitchell nodded. "At ease, Sergeant. You know General Harrington. This is Colonel Blackwood, Commander of Special Operations Task Force Sierra, and Major Ellis from Intelligence." Maya acknowledged each officer with a respectful nod. "Take a seat, Reynolds," Harrington said, gesturing to an empty chair. "We have a situation that requires your particular skill set." As she sat, Maya noted the satellite imagery and topographical maps spread across the table. They showed a remote mountainous area approximately 50 kilometers from their current, positioned deeper into contested territory than most operations ventured. The men who attempted to capture me weren't random insurgents, Harrington began without preamble. They were part of a specialized group we've been tracking for months. Former Special Forces operators from various nations who've gone mercenary. They call themselves Obsidian. Colonel Blackwood slid a folder across the table to her. These men are highly trained, well-equipped, and have intimate knowledge of our tactics. They've been providing advanced training to insurgent groups throughout the region, significantly increasing the effectiveness of enemy operations. Maya opened the folder to find surveillance photos of several men, including two she recognized from the previous day's encounter. Their faces were now burned into her memory. One she had eliminated during the extraction, the other had escaped. Their leader is this man, Major Ellis said, tapping one of the photographs. Alexander Korevich, former Russian Spetsnaz commander. He specializes in hostage operations and high-value target extraction. Intelligence suggests he was personally leading the team that captured General Harrington. Maya studied the photograph of a hard-faced man in his 40s, with close-cropped gray hair and cold, calculating eyes. He wasn't among the men I engaged yesterday, she noted. No, he wasn't, Harrington confirmed. Korevich typically operates from a distance, coordinating rather than directly participating. But the man you eliminated at the extraction point was his second in command. You've dealt them a significant blow, but also made yourself a target. Our intelligence indicates Korevich has taken the loss personally, Ellis continued. He rarely loses men, and never to a single operator, especially. He hesitated. Especially a woman, Maya finished for him, her tone matter of fact. I understand. What you need to understand, Mitchell interjected, is that he's put a price on your head. Specific orders to identify and eliminate the female sniper responsible for the failed operation. Maya absorbed this information with professional detachment. It wasn't the first time she'd been targeted, though perhaps never so personally. Which brings us to why you're here, Harrington said, redirecting the conversation. The intelligence I was gathering before the ambush pertained to a suspected Obsidian training facility in this region. He indicated an area on the satellite imagery. We believe Korevich is there now, planning their next operation. Based on intercepted communications, Ellis added, that operation involves another high-value target, a visiting diplomatic delegation scheduled to arrive next week. If successful, it could destabilize the entire regional security framework we've been building. Colonel Blackwood leaned forward. Normally, we deploy a full special operations team to locate and neutralize this threat. But Obsidian has proven adept at detecting conventional approaches. They have surveillance, informants, and counterintelligence capabilities that have frustrated previous attempts to locate their base of operations. Which is why we're considering an unconventional approach, Harrington said, his gaze steady on Maya. A single operator might succeed where a team would be detected. Maya understood immediately what was being proposed. You want me to find the training facility and confirm Korevich's presence, she stated. Initially, yes, Blackwood confirmed. This would be strictly a reconnaissance mission. Locate the facility, gather intelligence on their strength and capabilities, and identify Korevich, if present. Once we have confirmation, we can plan a coordinated strike. But there's something else, Mitchell added, his expression grave. A secondary objective that's emerged in the last 12 hours. Ellis pushed forward another satellite image, this one showing what appeared to be a small village in a mountain valley. This is Nayar, a village approximately 5 kilometers from the suspected training facility. Yesterday, Obsidian forces moved into the village and took hostages, specifically, these individuals. He placed photographs of 3 men on the table. Dr. Ahmed Rashid, a prominent humanitarian physician. Michael Corbin, a journalist documenting war crimes in the region. And this man, Lieutenant James Foster, one of our own who was working with local forces to establish security protocols. Why these specific individuals? Maya asked, studying the photographs. Dr. Rashid has been vocal about insurgent atrocities. Corbin's reporting has exposed several Obsidian operations to international scrutiny. And Lieutenant Foster. Harrington paused. Foster was part of the security team that helped extract me yesterday. He was separated during the initial ambush, and we believed him killed in action until we received proof of life 4 hours ago. The implications were clear. This was personal for Korovich. He was targeting those who had interfered with his operations, and Lieutenant Foster was being used as bait to draw out the Marines who had foiled his plans. We believe they're being held in or near the training facility, Blackwood continued. Based on Obsidian's past operations, we have limited time before they execute the hostages, probably via livestream to maximize the psychological impact. How long? Maya asked. 36 hours maximum, Alice replied grimly. They've already begun releasing propaganda videos threatening execution. Maya processed the information rapidly, her tactical mind already analyzing approach vectors and contingency plans. What assets would be available to me if I accept this mission? Limited, Mitchell admitted. We can insert you via high-altitude jump approximately 10 kilometers from the target area. You'd carry standard reconnaissance equipment, communications gear, and your weapon system. Extraction would be predetermined or on-call, depending on how the situation develops. No backup? Maya asked, though she already knew the answer. Not initially, Blackwood confirmed. A quick reaction force would be on standby, but intervention would likely compromise both your position and the hostages. This operation requires absolute discretion until we have actionable intelligence. In other words, I'm on my own, Maya stated, her tone neutral. Until you provide confirmation of the training facility's location and the hostages' status, Harrington agreed. Then we bring everything we have. Maya stood and moved to the satellite imagery, studying the terrain with practiced eyes. Dense forests, steep mountains, limited approach vectors, challenging but not impossible for someone with her training. The village of Nayar was nestled in a valley that provided only a few viable observation points, all of which would likely be monitored by Obsidian forces. I'll need updated weather patterns, historical satellite imagery to track movement trends, and any available intelligence on local civilian populations, she said, her decision already made. Also, I want to modify my equipment loadout. The officers exchanged glances, recognizing that she had accepted the mission without explicitly saying so. You'll have everything we can provide, Harrington promised. But Sergeant, I want to be absolutely clear about something. This mission is entirely voluntary. Given the personal nature of Korovich's vendetta against you, no one would question your refusal. Maya met his gaze steadily. With respect, sir, that's precisely why I need to go. Korovich made this personal when he targeted one of our own. And if he's specifically hunting for me, then I'm the perfect person to draw him out. Mitchell cleared his throat. Reynolds, you understand the risks here. You'd be deliberately placing yourself in the crosshairs of a man who has specifically ordered your elimination. I understand the risks perfectly, sir, Maya replied calmly. But I also understand the stakes. 3 lives, potentially hundreds more if the diplomatic delegation is successfully targeted, and a chance to neutralize a significant threat to our operations in the region. The equation is simple. Nothing about this is simple, Sergeant, Blackwood said, though there was grudging respect in his tone. But if you're willing, we'll begin preparations immediately. Insertion is planned for 0200 hours tomorrow. Maya nodded, already mentally cataloging the equipment she would need and the preparations required. I'll be ready, sir. As the meeting concluded, Harrington held her back with a gesture. When the others had left, he spoke quietly. There's something else you should know, Reynolds. One of the reasons we're considering this unconventional approach is because we have strong evidence suggesting a security leak within our conventional forces. Maya processed this information carefully. You believe someone is providing Obsidian with operational details. Yes, the ambush yesterday was too precisely coordinated, with too much specific information about our movements and security protocols. Someone with access is compromised, which is why a solo mission might succeed where a team operation would be detected, Maya concluded. Harrington nodded. Exactly. This information doesn't leave this room. Not even Mitchell or the others know the full extent of our suspicions. Understood, sir. I'll proceed accordingly. The next 12 hours passed in a blur of preparation. Maya studied the available intelligence, memorized topographical features, and selected her equipment with meticulous care. Her modified M405 rifle was cleaned and checked multiple times. Each round of ammunition was inspected individually before being loaded. There would be no room for equipment failure on this mission. At 0100 hours, she reported to the airfield where a specially modified MC-130 aircraft waited to transport her to the insertion point. The loadmaster helped her check her parachute and equipment one final time before they boarded. Captain Mitchell was waiting inside the aircraft. Last-minute intelligence update, he said, handing her a small tablet. Drone surveillance picked up unusual activity near this ridgeline, approximately 3 kilometers southwest of the suspected training facility. Could be a patrol route or observation post. Maya studied the imagery, committing the details to memory. Noted. I'll adjust my approach vector accordingly. Mitchell hesitated, then extended his hand. Good luck, Reynolds. Complete the reconnaissance and get out clean. Don't try to be a hero. Maya shook his hand firmly. Never do, sir. Just the job. As the aircraft lifted off into the night sky, Maya closed her eyes and began the mental preparation techniques she had developed over years of high-stress operations. Her breathing slowed, her heart rate decreased, and her mind cleared of everything except the mission parameters. 3 hours later, at precisely 25,000 feet above the target area, Maya stood at the open ramp of the aircraft. The jumpmaster gave her the signal, and she stepped into the void, plummeting through the darkness with her equipment secured to her body. The free fall lasted just over 2 minutes before she deployed her steerable parachute. Guiding herself toward the predetermined landing zone, a small clearing, 5 kilometers from the village of Nayar, she landed with practiced precision, immediately collapsing her chute and burying it beneath a layer of soil and vegetation. The night was clear and cold, with a quarter moon providing just enough light to navigate by without night vision. Maya oriented herself using the stars, then began moving silently through the forest toward her first observation point. By dawn, she had covered 3 kilometers of difficult terrain and established a concealed position overlooking a valley that led toward the SUSPECTED training facility. Using her spotting scope, she methodically scanned the area, noting signs of human activity, a recently used trail, branches broken in patterns consistent with patrol movements, and a communications wire partially exposed by recent rainfall. She documented everything in her tactical notebook, creating a map of movement patterns and potential security measures. As the day progressed, she observed 3 separate patrol groups moving through the area, their behavior confirming her suspicions. These weren't standard insurgents, they moved with the disciplined precision of professional special operators, maintaining proper intervals, using hand signals rather than radios, and systematically clearing their sectors as they advanced. Maya remained motionless for hours, her ghillie suit and natural cover rendering her invisible to the passing patrols. When darkness fell, she moved again, advancing closer to the village while maintaining her distance from the patrol routes she had identified. By midnight of the second day, She had reached a ridgeline that provided a clear view of Nayar. The village appeared unnaturally quiet, no lights, no movement, none of the normal activities one would expect even in a conflict zone. Through her thermal scope, she detected guard positions at key points around the village perimeter, confirming that the entire area was under Obsidian control. Maya used her secure communication system to transmit her initial findings to the command center, keeping her transmission brief to minimize the risk of detection. Then she settled in to observe the village through the night, watching for any sign of the hostages or indication of where they might be held. Shortly before dawn, her patience was rewarded. A small convoy of 3 vehicles entered the village from the north, the direction of the suspected training facility. They stopped in the central square, and several armed men emerged, followed by 3 figures with hoods over their heads and their hands bound behind their backs. Through her scope, Maya could see that the bound men matched the general builds of the 3 hostages. They were marched to a small building on the eastern edge of the village, which was surrounded by additional guards once they were inside. This development presented both a challenge and an opportunity. The hostages were now confirmed to be in the village, not at the training facility as initially suspected. This meant Maya needed to adjust her reconnaissance plans to include both locations. Significant expansion of her mission parameters. She transmitted this update to command, receiving new orders in return. Maintain surveillance on the hostage location, while proceeding with reconnaissance of the training facility. The rescue operation would depend on having complete intelligence on both sites. As dawn broke, Maya relocated to a new position that allowed her to maintain observation of the village while beginning her approach toward the suspected training facility. The terrain grew increasingly difficult: steep slopes, dense vegetation, and rocky outcroppings that offered cover but made movement arduous. By midday, she had reached a vantage point approximately 2 kilometers from where intelligence suggested the training facility was located. Using her scope, she conducted a methodical scan of the area, looking for the telltale signs of human presence in an otherwise uninhabited region. There a flash of reflected light from what appeared to be a natural rock formation. Maya focused her scope on the area, slowly discerning what had been carefully concealed. Observation post built into the natural landscape, with a camouflaged sniper position monitoring the approaches. Her experienced eye began to see what others would miss: the subtle alterations to the natural environment, the carefully maintained fields of fire, the communications antenna disguised as a dead tree. The training facility wasn't merely nearby. It was integrated into the mountain itself, with entrance points concealed among the rocks and foliage. As she continued her observation, Maya noticed a pattern to the guard rotations and patrol movements. They were professional and thorough, but also predictable, a potential vulnerability if exploited correctly. She documented each patrol route, guard position, and observed security measure, building a comprehensive picture of the facility's defenses. The most significant discovery came late in the afternoon, when a group of men emerged from what appeared to be a solid rock face, a concealed entrance to what must be a cave system within the mountain. Among them was a figure Maya immediately recognized from the intelligence briefing: Alexander Kurovich himself, distinguishable by his bearing and the deference shown to him by the others. This was the confirmation they needed. Maya carefully photographed the group using her scope's integrated camera, then transmitted the images along with her complete reconnaissance report to command. The response came quickly: extraction in 6 hours. A rescue operation was being prepared based on her intelligence. But as Maya prepared to withdraw to the extraction point, a new development caught her attention. Kurovich and his team were boarding vehicles, the same type that had transported the hostages to the village that morning. Their direction of travel indicated they were heading toward Najar. Maya made a rapid decision. The original plan had been to extract and allow the rescue force to handle the operation, but the hostages might not have 6 hours. If Korovich was personally going to the village, it likely meant the execution timeline had been accelerated. She transmitted a brief update to command, informing them of this development and her decision to proceed to the village to maintain surveillance on the hostages. Then she began moving, using the terrain and her training to parallel Korovich's route while remaining undetected. By the time the vehicles reached Nayar, Maya had established a new observation position on a forested slope overlooking the village. Through her scope, she watched as Korovich entered the building where the hostages were held. Minutes later, camera equipment was brought in confirmation that they were preparing for the execution video. Maya transmitted this urgent update to command. The response was immediate. The rescue operation was being accelerated, but the quick reaction force was still at least 90 minutes out. The hostages likely had far less time than that. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the village, Maya faced the most difficult decision of her career. She could maintain her observation role as ordered, potentially watching 3 men die while waiting for the QRF to arrive. Or she could intervene directly one operator against at least 20 highly trained adversaries, with minimal chance of success. The decision crystallized when she observed through her scope as the first hostage Lieutenant Foster was brought out of the building and forced to kneel in the village square. A camera was set up in front of him, and Korovich himself stood nearby, apparently preparing to make a statement before the execution. Maya calculated distance, wind, light conditions. 850 meters. Crosswind approximately 5 to 8 miles per hour. Fading light creating challenging visibility. Not impossible, but at the extreme edge of reliable precision, even for her. She made her decision. Adjusting her position slightly to establish the most stable shooting platform possible, Maya took careful aim at Korovich. If she could eliminate the leadership, it might create enough confusion to delay the execution until the QRF arrived. She controlled her breathing, finding the perfect rhythm between heartbeats, and gently squeezed the trigger. The rifle cracked, the sound echoing across the valley as the bullet traveled toward its target. Through her scope, Maya watched as Korovich suddenly staggered, clutching his shoulder, not a fatal hit, but enough to create the desired chaos. Guards scattered, seeking cover and trying to identify the shooter's position. The hostage was roughly dragged back toward the building. Maya immediately relocated, knowing her position was compromised. She moved rapidly through the forest, circling to approach the village from a different angle. The sun had fully set now, darkness providing additional cover for her movements. She established a new position and assessed the situation. The village was on high alert, with guards establishing a perimeter and conducting sweeps of the surrounding area. Korovich had been moved inside, his condition unknown. Most importantly, the execution had been delayed, but for how long remained uncertain. Maya transmitted an update to command, hostile force on high alert, execution temporarily delayed, requesting immediate QRF intervention. The response indicated the force was inbound, ETA now 45 minutes. Too long, Maya knew the moment of surprise had passed. Once Korovich recovered from the initial shock, he would likely accelerate the executions rather than risk further delay. She needed to create additional disruption. Using the darkness as cover, she worked her way closer to the village perimeter, identifying the power generator that supplied electricity to the buildings. With careful aim, she targeted the generator's fuel tank. The resulting explosion plunged the village into darkness and created a new wave of confusion among the Obsidian forces. In the chaos, Maya made her most audacious move, yet she infiltrated the village perimeter, using the guards' predictable response patterns against them. Most were focused outward, searching for a sniper in the distance. None expected an operator to move directly into their midst. She reached the building where the hostages were held. eliminating 2 guards with her suppressed sidearm before they could raise an alarm. Inside, she found 2 more guards and a wounded Korovich, who was being treated by one of his men. The ensuing close-quarters engagement was brief and violent. Maya's years of training and combat experience gave her the critical edge in the darkened interior. When it ended, Korovich and his remaining men were down, and she was freeing the hostages from their restraints. U.S. Marines, she said quietly as she cut Lieutenant Foster's bonds. QRF is inbound, but we need to move now. Sergeant Reynolds? Foster asked incredulously, recognizing her from the previous operation. Save it for the debriefing, Lieutenant, Maya replied, already moving to free the other hostages. We've got about 30 minutes to get clear of the village, before Korovich's remaining forces realize what's happened and lock this place down completely. Maya led the freed hostages through the darkened village, staying close to walls and shadows, her senses hyper-alert to any movement or sound that might signal discovery. Lieutenant Foster, despite his injuries, helped support Dr. Rashid, who was struggling after days of captivity and mistreatment. Corbin, the journalist, moved with surprising agility, clearly no stranger to conflict zones. The perimeter will be heavily guarded, Maya whispered as they paused in the shadow of a storage building. Our best chance is the northeastern sector where the explosion disrupted their patrol pattern. There's a drainage tunnel, Foster offered quietly. I noticed it when they brought us in. Runs under the village wall near the eastern corner. Maya nodded appreciatively. Even as a captive, Foster had been cataloging potential escape routes, the mark of a well-trained Marine. Lead the way, Lieutenant. They moved silently through the confusion of the blackout, the Obsidian forces still, primarily focused on securing their wounded leader and re-establishing order rather than checking the hostages. The drainage tunnel was exactly where Foster had indicated, narrow, partially flooded and reeking of decay, but unguarded. It's tight, Maya warned, assessing the opening. Single file, move quickly but quietly. One by one, they slipped into the tunnel. The cold, foul water reached mid-thigh at its deepest point, but the passage remained navigable. After 50 meters of crouching and waiting, they emerged on the outer slope of the village perimeter, concealed from guard positions by a stand of scrub brush. Now for the hard part, Maya said, consulting her tactical map. We need to reach the extraction point, approximately 4 kilometers to the southeast. There's high ground between here and there, which gives us cover but makes for difficult travel, especially with your injuries. I can manage, Rashid said with quiet dignity despite his obvious pain. Freedom is worth the effort. What about Korovich? Corbin asked, his journalist's instincts surfacing even in crisis. Did you kill him? Wounded, not confirmed eliminated, Maya replied tersely. Which means he'll have his entire force hunting us once they realize you're gone. We need to move now. They set out into the darkness, Maya taking point while Foster covered their rear. The terrain was challenging, rocky slopes, dense underbrush, and numerous ravines that forced detours. Maya set a careful pace, balancing the need for speed with the physical limitations of the freed hostages. After an hour of travel, they paused in a sheltered depression to rest and reassess. Maya used her secure communications gear to update the inbound QRF on their position and status. The QRF has revised their flight path to intercept us, she informed the group. New extraction point is 2 kilometers southeast of our current position. They'll be there in approximately 25 minutes. Will we make it? Rashid asked, massaging his injured leg. We'll make it, Maya assured him, though her eyes continued scanning their surroundings. But we need to assume Obsidian has discovered the escape by now. They'll be deploying search teams with tracking dogs and night vision equipment. They're more likely to use thermal imaging, Foster added. Standard Obsidian protocol based on what I observed during captivity. This information triggered a tactical adjustment in Maya's mind. Then we need to mask our heat signatures as much as possible. There's a stream about half a kilometer ahead. We'll follow it part of the way. The cold water will reduce our thermal visibility." They resumed their journey, moving with increased urgency. The distant sound of vehicles and the occasional flash of searchlights confirmed Foster's prediction. Obsidian had indeed discovered their escape and launched pursuit operations. The stream, when they reached it, was a blessing and a curse. The frigid mountain water helped mask their thermal signatures, but also sapped their strength and slowed their progress as they picked their way across slippery rocks. 500 meters to the extraction point, Maya announced after checking her GPS. "We're going to make it." The words had barely left her lips when the distinctive crack of a rifle split the night, the round impacting a rock mere centimeters from Corbin's head. "Sniper!" Maya shouted, immediately pushing the hostages toward the nearest cover, a cluster of large boulders beside the stream. "Get down and stay down." She dropped into a prone position, scanning the darkness through her rifle scope, searching for the telltale signs of a sniper's position. They're a faint reflection of moonlight on a scope lens, approximately 600 meters upslope. Maya took aim and fired 2 quick shots, not expecting to hit at that distance in such poor light, but forcing the enemy sniper to relocate. It bought them precious seconds to improve their defensive position. "Foster, can you still shoot?" Maya asked, passing her sidearm to the lieutenant. "Yes, ma'am," he replied, checking the weapon with practiced efficiency despite his injuries. "Cover our western flank. They'll try to circle around and cut off our route to the extraction point." As if to confirm her assessment, movement flickered at the edge of her vision, multiple figures advancing through the brush to their west. Foster engaged immediately, his disciplined fire forcing the approaching Obsidian operatives to seek cover. Maya keyed her radio. "Badger 6, this is Longshot. We are engaged with hostile forces approximately 400 meters southwest of extraction point. Request immediate air support." The response crackled through her earpiece. "Longshot, Badger 6. Air support inbound, ETA 3 minutes. Hold position." 3 minutes is a lifetime," Corbin muttered, pressing himself against the rocks as bullets impacted around them. "Then we'll live a lifetime in the next 3 minutes," Maya replied, her voice steady as she sighted through her scope and eliminated an Obsidian fighter who had exposed his position. The firefight intensified as more hostiles joined the engagement. Maya and Foster maintained a disciplined defense, making each shot count, constantly adjusting their positions to present unpredictable targets. Rashid and Corbin huddled behind the largest boulder, the doctor applying a field dressing to a graze wound the journalist had sustained. "They're maneuvering to surround us," Foster warned, his voice tense as he reloaded. "At least 8 hostiles that I can count, probably more we can't see." Maya had reached the same conclusion. Their position was becoming untenable, and the extraction point remained frustratingly out of reach. A decision point had arrived: remain and deteriorating, cover or attempt a dangerous dash across open ground to reach the extraction zone. The decision was made for them when a fragmentation grenade landed among the boulders. Maya spotted it instantly. "Grenade!" she shouted, lunging toward the explosive. In one fluid motion, she scooped it up and hurled it back toward the attackers. The explosion ripped through the night seconds later, followed by cries of pain and confusion. "Now," Maya commanded. While they're disoriented, make for the tree line to the southeast. I'll cover you. Foster understood immediately, guiding Rashid and Corbin into a crouching run toward the indicated position while Maya laid down suppressive fire, forcing the Obsidian fighters to keep their heads down. When the hostages had covered half the distance to the tree line, Maya began leapfrogging backward, continuing to engage targets while gradually withdrawing. It was textbook small unit tactics executed with flawless precision despite the chaos of combat. They had almost reached the relative safety of the trees when a new threat emerged, the distinctive Sound of a helicopter approaching from the north. Not the QRF, but an obsidian air asset joining the hunt. Into the trees now, Maya ordered, abandoning any pretense of a measured withdrawal. Spread out, 5-meter intervals, move. They plunged into the forest as the helicopter's spotlight swept the ground behind them, its mounted machine gun raking their former position with devastating fire. The extraction point was now just 200 meters ahead, but the helicopter complicated matters exponentially. Maya made a rapid tactical decision. Foster, get them to the extraction point. It's a small clearing directly ahead. I'll draw off the helicopter. Sergeant, Foster began to protest. That's an order, Lieutenant, Maya cut him off. The mission is to get the hostages out safely. Make it happen. Before he could object further, Maya broke away from the group, moving perpendicular to their path. Once clear, she removed a signal flare from her equipment harness, activated it, and hurled it into an open area away from both her position and the extraction point. The helicopter crew took the bait, the spotlight immediately swinging toward the bright red flare. Maya used the diversion to move to a better firing position, then took careful aim at the aircraft's tail rotor assembly, the most vulnerable point on most helicopter designs. Her first shot missed. Her second struck the tail boom, but seemed to cause no significant damage. The third, however, found its mark. The helicopter's tail rotor erupted in a shower of sparks, the aircraft immediately beginning to spin uncontrollably as the pilot fought to maintain control. It crashed less than 30 seconds later, impacting in a wooded area with a thunderous explosion that momentarily illuminated the entire valley. Maya didn't wait to admire her handiwork, immediately running toward the extraction point, where she could now hear the distinctive sound of the QRF helicopters approaching. She burst into the clearing just as the first Black Hawk touched down, its crew chief providing covering fire from the door gun while Foster helped Rashid and Corbin aboard. Maya sprinted the final distance, diving into the helicopter as more obsidian fighters emerged from the forest, their bullets pinging off the aircraft's armored hull. Go, go, go! The crew chief shouted to the pilots, and the Black Hawk lifted off, banking sharply to the east as a second helicopter provided covering fire for their departure. As they gained altitude and safety, Maya finally allowed herself a moment to breathe. Her muscles trembled with exhaustion, the adrenaline that had sustained her through the mission finally beginning to ebb. That was... Corbin seemed at a loss for words, perhaps the first time in the journalist's career. I've covered wars for 15 years. I've never seen anything like what you just did. Maya simply nodded, too tired for conversation. She closed her eyes briefly, the helicopter's vibrations almost soothing after the intensity of the past hours. Sergeant Reynolds, Dr. Rashid's accented voice drew her attention. The physician was looking at her with a mixture of gratitude and concern. You're bleeding. Maya glanced down, surprised to discover a growing bloodstain on her left side, a bullet wound she hadn't even felt in the heat of combat. It's nothing, she began, but the edges of her vision were already darkening as shock set in. The last thing she heard before consciousness faded was Foster's voice, urgent and commanding. Medic! We need a medic here now. She awoke in a military hospital 3 days later, bandaged and connected to monitoring equipment, but very much alive. Sunlight streamed through windows that looked out over the dusty expanse of Bagram Air Base. A nurse noticed her, stirring and immediately approached. Welcome back, Sergeant Reynolds, she said with a smile. You gave everyone quite a scare. The hostages? Maya asked, her voice rough from disuse. All safe and recovering well, the nurse assured her. Lieutenant Foster has been checking on you twice daily. So has General Harrington when he's not in meetings. Maya nodded, relief washing through her. The mission had succeeded against all odds and protocols, against the conventional wisdom that had initially kept her from combat roles. against an enemy who had specifically targeted her for elimination. The nurse helped her drink some water, then checked her vitals. The doctor will want to see you now that you're awake. And you have visitors waiting, quite important ones from what I gather. Should I tell them you're up for company? Yes, Maya decided. Despite her condition, she wanted to hear firsthand about the aftermath of the operation. 20 minutes later, after a brief examination by the doctor, her hospital room filled with an unlikely gathering. General Harrington entered first, followed by Lieutenant Foster, walking with crutches, Colonel Blackwood, Captain Mitchell, and surprisingly, Dr. Rashid and Michael Corbin. Sergeant Reynolds, Harrington began, his voice carrying the weight of formal ceremony despite the hospital setting. On behalf of the United States Marine Corps and the Joint Special Operations Command, I want to extend our profound gratitude for your extraordinary service. Maya attempted to sit straighter, instinctively responding to the presence of senior officers despite her injuries. Thank you, sir. I was just doing my job. No, Sergeant, Harrington contradicted her gently. You went far beyond just doing your job. You single-handedly located a high-value target, confirmed the status of hostages, and then, contrary to all protocols, but absolutely the right call given the circumstances, executed a successful rescue operation against overwhelming odds. Colonel Blackwood stepped forward. The intelligence you gathered led to a follow-up operation that completely dismantled Obsidian's regional network. Alexander Kurovich was captured alive during your rescue operation. His interrogation has yielded critical information about terrorist networks throughout 3 countries. And you solved our security leak problem, Mitchell added. Kurovich had compromised a communications specialist at headquarters. That individual is now in custody, facing charges of treason. Maya absorbed this information, still processing the full impact of what had been accomplished. And the diplomatic delegation? Were they targeted as planned? The threat has been neutralized, Harrington confirmed. The delegation completed their mission successfully, unaware of how close they came to disaster. Lieutenant Foster moved closer to her bedside, leaning on his crutches. Sergeant, I want you to know that every Marine in my security detail who survived the initial ambush is aware of what you did. Not just for the general, but for us hostages as well. The Corps will remember this. As will the world, Corbin interjected, his journalist's enthusiasm barely contained. I've been given clearance to write about what happened, with certain operational details omitted, of course. The public needs to know about Marines like you, Sergeant Reynolds, especially women serving in roles that were once closed to them. Maya shifted uncomfortably, unused to being the center of such attention. I appreciate that, Mr. Corbin, but any Marine in my position would have done the same. Perhaps, Dr. Rashid spoke for the first time, his dignified presence commanding attention despite his quiet tone. But it was not any Marine in that position. It was you. In my country, there is a saying, the true measure of courage is not in choosing danger, but in facing it when it finds you. You exemplify this wisdom, Sergeant. General Harrington cleared his throat, returning the focus to official matters. Sergeant Reynolds, I've been authorized to inform you that you will be receiving the Navy Cross for your actions. The recommendation has already been approved at the highest levels. Maya's eyes widened slightly. The Navy Cross was the second highest military decoration, awarded to members of the naval service, including the Marine Corps. It was rarely given, and even more rarely to women. Additionally, Harrington continued, you're being offered a direct commission as an officer upon your recovery, with assignment to Special Operations Training Development. Your experience and demonstrated abilities are too valuable to remain unutilized in our evolving operational environment. Sir, Maya found herself momentarily speechless, the opportunities presented exceeding anything she had imagined possible in her career. You don't need to decide immediately, Mitchell assured her. Take some time to recover and consider the options. But know that the door is open, and not just as a token gesture. What you've demonstrated is exactly what our special operations community needs: adaptability, initiative, and excellence regardless of gender." After the visitors departed, promising to return when she was stronger, Maya found herself alone with her thoughts. Through the window, she could see helicopters coming and going, the endless rhythm of military operations continuing. Somewhere out there, Marines like her were preparing for missions, facing dangers, making split-second decisions that could mean the difference between life and death. The difference now was that her actions had helped ensure that those Marines would be selected for their abilities rather than limited by preconceptions. The barriers hadn't fallen completely. She harbored no illusions about the resistance that would remain, but a significant crack had formed in the ceiling that had constrained women in combat roles for generations. 2 weeks later, sufficiently recovered to walk unaided, Maya stood on the tarmac as a transport aircraft prepared for departure. Lieutenant Foster approached, his own injuries healing well. "Heard you accepted the commission," he said, extending his hand. Maya nodded, shaking his hand firmly. "Captain Reynolds, as of next month. Special Operations Training Command." "They're lucky to have you," Foster said sincerely. "The next generation will benefit from what you've learned. And from what others will learn after them," Maya added. "This isn't just about me or what happened on this deployment. It's about ensuring that every Marine, regardless of gender, has the opportunity to serve where their skills are most needed." Foster nodded in understanding. "Any advice for those of us still in the field?" Maya considered the question seriously. "Trust your training, but be willing to adapt when circumstances demand it. And remember that sometimes the most important qualification isn't physical strength or technical skill. It's the determination to complete the mission no matter what obstacles arise." As the call came for boarding, Maya picked up her duffel bag and turned toward the waiting aircraft. The path ahead would bring new challenges, instructing others, developing training protocols, perhaps eventually returning to the field in a different capacity. But she would face those challenges with the same resolve that had carried her through the mountains of Afghanistan, guided her through enemy territory, and ultimately changed the perception of what any Marine could accomplish when given the opportunity. The true legacy of her actions wouldn't be measured in medals or promotions, but in the doors that would open for those who followed. Every barrier broken made the next one weaker. Every standard exceeded raised expectations for all who served. This was the essence of what it meant to be a Marine, not to seek glory for oneself, but to advance the capabilities of the Corps as a whole. As the transport lifted off, carrying her toward new responsibilities and opportunities, Maya reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. From being relegated to distant security positions to leading one of the most significant special operations in recent memory, the path had been neither easy nor direct. But that perhaps was the most important lesson of all. Progress rarely followed a straight line. It came in moments of crisis when conventional approaches failed. It emerged from the determination of individuals who refused to accept artificial limitations. And sometimes it arrived in the form of a single shot through darkness, defying impossible odds to find its mark and change the course of events. In the end, Maya knew that was what would be remembered long after the details of operations faded from memory, not just what she had accomplished, but what her actions had proven possible for all who would follow in her footsteps. 6 months after her mission in Afghanistan, Captain Maya Reynolds stood behind the podium at Quantico, facing a class of 30 Marine officers selected for advanced sniper and reconnaissance training. The room held an unusual mix: 25 men and 5 women, the highest number of female officers ever admitted to the program. "Precision," Maya began, her voice carrying easily across the quiet classroom. "In our line of work, precision isn't just about marksmanship. It's about decision-making under pressure. It's about resource management when you're alone in hostile territory. It's about knowing when to follow protocol and when the situation demands that you adapt. She advanced her presentation to display a topographical map of mountainous terrain that looked painfully familiar to many of the combat veterans in the room. This case study examines Operation Ridgeline, conducted 6 months ago in eastern Afghanistan. The objective was intelligence gathering on an insurgent training facility, with a secondary objective that emerged during the operation: the rescue of 3 high-value hostages. The officers leaned forward, immediately recognizing this wasn't a historical scenario from some distant conflict. This was recent, relevant, and based on Maya's own experience, though she presented it with professional detachment, not mentioning her personal involvement. The operation began as standard reconnaissance, she continued, highlighting approach vectors and observation points on the map. A solo operator was inserted via HAHO jump to minimize detection risk. Initial intelligence suggested a 36-hour window before hostage execution. For the next hour, Maya broke down the operation in meticulous detail: the tactical decisions, the risk assessments, the equipment considerations, and the critical moment when the mission parameters shifted from observation to direct action. The decision point came when the hostages were moved for immediate execution. She explained, her tone matter-of-fact despite the intensity of the memory. The QRF was still 45 minutes out. Standard protocol would have been to maintain observation and relay intelligence for the incoming team. Lieutenant Alvarez, one of the female officers, raised her hand. But waiting would have meant losing the hostages, correct? Maya nodded. Correct. This is where we confront the limitations of protocol versus the reality of dynamic situations. The operator made the assessment that direct intervention, despite significant tactical disadvantages, provided the only realistic chance of hostage survival. What were the odds of success for a solo extraction against those numbers? Asked Captain Winters, a veteran reconnaissance officer with 2 combat tours under his belt. Conventional tactical analysis would put the odds at less than 15%, Maya replied honestly. But here's the key lesson: conventional analysis doesn't account for asymmetrical approaches or psychological impact. She advanced the presentation to show a new tactical diagram. Instead of a direct assault, the operator used precisely targeted disruptions, first eliminating the extraction vehicle with a remotely detonated charge, then creating confusion with targeted fire from multiple positions, giving the impression of a larger force. The class was now fully engaged, some taking rapid notes, others studying the tactical displays with intense concentration. The critical factor wasn't firepower advantage, but the psychological impact of unexpected threats from unexpected vectors, Maya emphasized. By the time the operator infiltrated the hostage location, the enemy force was disorganized, focusing outward rather than on their prisoners. As she concluded the case study presentation, Maya looked across the attentive faces before her. These officers represented the future of special operations, selected for their abilities regardless of gender. Though the women in the room had undoubtedly faced additional scrutiny and skepticism along their journeys, the lessons from Operation Ridgeline extend beyond this specific scenario, she said. They challenge us to reconsider our fundamental approach to special operations. Traditional models emphasize overwhelming force, technological superiority, or numerical advantage. But the most effective operations often succeed through adaptation, psychological leverage, and precise application of limited resources. After dismissing the class, Maya gathered her materials, preparing for her next session practical field training that would begin at dawn the following day. As she closed her laptop, she noticed Lieutenant Alvarez lingering behind. "Something on your mind, Lieutenant?" Maya asked, recognizing the look of someone with unasked questions. "Ma'am," Alvarez began hesitantly, "the operation you described. That was you, wasn't it? The solo operator who rescued those hostages?" Maya considered the question carefully. She had deliberately presented the case study in the third person, focusing on the tactical lessons rather than her personal experience. But perhaps there was value in acknowledging the reality. Yes, she admitted simply, though that information isn't widely circulated. Alvarez nodded, seeming unsurprised by the confirmation. I suspected as much. There have been rumors. Stories about a female Marine sniper who changed the game in Afghanistan. Rumors tend to exaggerate, Maya cautioned. The reality was just doing the job that needed doing with the resources available. With respect, Captain, I think it was more than that, Alvarez persisted. Your actions didn't just save those hostages. They've opened doors for officers like me. The fact that I'm even standing in this classroom is partly because of what you proved was possible. Maya felt a momentary discomfort at the admiration in the lieutenant's eyes. She had never sought to be an example or a trailblazer, just a Marine doing her duty to the best of her abilities. Lieutenant, if my actions have helped create opportunities for qualified Marines regardless of gender, then I'm glad. But remember that the standard doesn't change. The mission doesn't get easier because of who you are or what you represent. I understand that, ma'am, Alvarez replied with conviction. None of us are looking for special treatment or lower standards. We just want the chance to prove ourselves on the same terms as everyone else. Then focus on becoming the best tactical operator you can be, Maya advised. Your actions in the field will speak louder than any words or policies. Excellence doesn't require explanation or justification. It simply demonstrates itself when it matters most. As Alvarez departed, Maya reflected on how much had changed in the months since Operation Ridgeline. The Navy Cross ceremony had been conducted with minimal public fanfare at her request, but its impact within the Marine Corps had been substantial. Training programs had been revised, evaluation criteria reconsidered, and opportunities expanded, not through mandated quotas or lowered standards, but through recognition that talent and capability couldn't be predicted by gender alone. Later that evening, Maya sat in her office reviewing training plans for the next day's field exercise when a knock sounded at her door. Looking up, she was surprised to see General Harrington in the doorway. She immediately stood at attention. General, sir. I wasn't informed you were visiting Quantico today. Harrington waved her back into her seat as he entered. At ease, Captain. This isn't an official visit, just stopping by on my way to the Pentagon. I wanted to see how the training program is developing. Very well, sir, Maya reported, gesturing to the chair opposite her desk. The current class shows exceptional promise. We've implemented the tactical adaptability modules you approved, and the preliminary results are encouraging. Harrington nodded, studying her with the same penetrating gaze she remembered from their first meeting after her rescue mission. And how are you adjusting to life as an instructor? Must be quite different from field operations. It has its challenges, sir, Maya admitted. But there's satisfaction in knowing that the lessons we're developing will influence operations for years to come. Indeed. The general's expression became more serious. Which is why I'm here. I've received intelligence about a developing situation in Libya that may require your particular expertise. Maya's full attention snapped to Harrington's words. Sir, a CIA deep cover operative has gone missing near Tripoli. Initial intelligence suggests involvement from the remnants of Korovich's network. Apparently his capture didn't fully dismantle their operation. They've regrouped under new leadership, and they seem to be specifically targeting individuals connected to Operation Ridgeline. The implications were clear. This wasn't just another mission, it was potentially personal, directed at those who had dismantled their organization in Afghanistan. The operative had critical intelligence about weapons transfers to terrorist cells across North Africa. Harrington continued. If that information is compromised, we're looking at significant threats to multiple U.S. interests in the region. What's the extraction plan, sir? Maya asked, already mentally cataloging the specialized equipment and intelligence she would need. Harrington shook his head slightly. This isn't an official briefing, Captain. I'm here to gauge your interest before bringing this to the formal planning stage. Given your history with Obsidian and your current role in training, you have every right to decline involvement. Maya considered his words carefully. Her position at Quantico was important, developing the next generation of special operators who would carry these lessons forward. But she also recognized the unique value she could bring to this specific mission. The CIA has capable extraction teams, sir, she noted. What makes this situation require my involvement specifically? Harrington nodded, appreciating her direct question. 2 factors. First, your familiarity with Obsidian's operational patterns and psychology gives you an advantage no other operator can match. Second, we have reason to believe they're specifically expecting a conventional extraction team. Your unconventional approach might be exactly what's needed to succeed where standard protocols would fail. Maya sat silently for a moment, weighing the considerations. And the training program while I'm deployed? Captain Winters would assume temporary oversight. The core curriculum you've developed would continue uninterrupted. She nodded slowly. When would I deploy? Planning would begin immediately. Likely insertion within 72 hours, depending on intelligence development. Would I operate solo again or with a team? That would be your call, Harrington replied. You'd have full authority to select your operational parameters based on your assessment of the situation. If you want a team, you can handpick the members. Maya rose and moved to the window, looking out over the Quantico training grounds where Marines were preparing for evening exercises. The decision wasn't simply about accepting another mission. It was about the direction of her career, about balancing her value as an operator against her impact as an instructor. 24 hours, she said finally, turning back to Harrington. I'll give you my decision within 24 hours, sir. The general stood, respecting her need to consider the options carefully. That's fair. For what it's worth, Captain, there's no wrong choice here. Your contributions, whether in the field or in this classroom, are equally valuable to the cause. After Harrington departed, Maya remained at the window, watching the training exercises continue in the gathering darkness. The Marines below moved with disciplined precision through simulated combat. SCENAR, men and women working together based on capability rather than preconception, each judged solely on their performance. That, perhaps, was the most meaningful change she had witnessed since her return from Afghanistan. Not the medals or the promotions or the personal recognition, but the subtle shift in how female Marines were perceived by their peers and superiors. No longer exceptional anomalies to be scrutinized for any sign of weakness, but simply Marines doing their jobs alongside their brothers in arms. Her satellite phone buzzed, displaying a secure message from an unlisted number. It was brief and encrypted, but Maya recognized the source immediately: Lieutenant Foster, now assigned to a special operations unit in North Africa. Confirmed Obsidian activity near Tripoli. New leader identified. Planning phase for major operation underway. Recommend Dustwolf protocol implementation. Dustwolf was the code designation for high-priority intervention against imminent threats. Foster wouldn't have used it lightly. The message reinforced what Harrington had told her. The situation was developing rapidly and had potentially severe consequences. Maya composed a brief reply. Understood. Status of missing operative? The response came seconds later. Unknown. Last communication indicated possession of critical intel on weapons transfers. Possible compromise of multiple field agents if extracted under duress. The stakes were clarifying her decision. This wasn't just about one missing operative. It was about preventing a cascade of compromised intelligence that could endanger dozens of agents and operations throughout the region. Her decision crystallized with sudden clarity. She reached for her secure line and dialed Harrington's direct number. General, it's Reynolds. I'm in. But I want to select a small team, 3 operators with specific skill sets complementary to mine. You have anyone in mind? Harrington asked, not bothering to hide his relief at her decision. Yes, sir. Lieutenant Alvarez from my current training class, her background in signals intelligence will be valuable. Sergeant Wilson from 3rd Reconnaissance Battalion, best tracker in the Corps, and Lieutenant Foster, who's already in theater with first-hand knowledge of the current situation. Consider it done, Harrington replied. Report to planning at 06:00 tomorrow. Full operational authority will be granted once you're in theater. As she ended the call, Maya felt the familiar sense of purpose that came with mission acceptance, the narrowing of focus, the mental preparation, the methodical assessment of variables and contingencies. But this mission felt different from those she had undertaken before. This time, she wasn't trying to prove anything, not to herself, not to the Corps, not to those who had doubted the capabilities of female Marines in combat roles. This mission was simply about applying her unique skills and experience to a situation where they could make the critical difference. Her phone buzzed again, another message from Foster. Heard you might be joining us. The team here would welcome your expertise. Maya smiled slightly at the carefully worded message. Foster couldn't openly acknowledge mission details on even a secure line. But his meaning was clear. Her reputation had preceded her. And the operators already in theater recognized the value she would bring. She replied simply, incoming. Prepare for unconventional approach. The following morning, Maya stood before her training class one last time before her deployment. She had modified the day's lesson plan to focus on adaptive, decision-making in compromised environment scenarios, where standard operating procedures might prove insufficient or counterproductive. The most dangerous moment in any operation, she told the attentive officers, isn't when you're facing superior firepower or numerical disadvantage. It's when you find yourself clinging to familiar protocols in an unfamiliar situation. Tactical flexibility isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. She gestured to a complex scenario displayed on the tactical board. This exercise will place you in situations where standard approaches will fail. Your objective is to identify the moment when adherence to protocol becomes a liability rather than an asset, and to develop alternative approaches that accomplish the mission objectives. As she observed the officers breaking into teams to tackle the scenarios, she noted with satisfaction that the groups formed based on complementary skills rather than gender or previous relationships. Merit and capability had become the defining factors, exactly as it should be. Lieutenant Alvarez approached after receiving her notification of selection for the upcoming mission. Captain, thank you for this opportunity. May I ask why you selected me? There are more experienced officers available. Experience isn't always the determining factor, Lieutenant, Maya replied. I selected you for your adaptability, your signals intelligence background, and your demonstrated ability to think beyond conventional parameters. Where we're going, those qualities will be more valuable than another year or two of field operations. Alvarez nodded, her expression reflecting both the honor and the weight of the responsibility. I won't let you down, Captain. I know you won't, Maya assured her. Gear up and be ready for departure at 1800. This operation will test everything you've learned in this program, and then demand more. But remember, the most effective weapon you'll carry isn't your rifle or your equipment. It's your capacity to adapt when circumstances demand it. As the lieutenant departed to prepare, Maya turned her attention to finalizing her own equipment selections. The lessons of Operation Ridgeline would inform every aspect of this new mission, not just the tactical approaches, but the fundamental philosophy that had proven successful against overwhelming odds. Conventional wisdom suggested that special operations required overwhelming force, superior technology, or numerical advantage. But Maya had demonstrated an alternative approach: precision over power, psychological leverage over brute force, and adaptive decision-making over rigid protocol. These principles had changed the outcome in Afghanistan, not just saving lives, but reshaping perceptions about who could succeed in the most demanding combat roles. Now they would be tested again, against an enemy that had adapted and evolved, in an environment where traditional advantages might prove irrelevant or unavailable. As she prepared for deployment, Maya reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From being the female Marine relegated to distant security positions to leading a hand-picked special operations team on a high-priority extraction mission, the path had been neither straight nor easy. It had been forged through perseverance, excellence, and the courage to challenge assumptions about what was possible. The true measure of her impact wouldn't be found in medals or citations, but in the opportunities now available to Marines like Lieutenant Alvarez's, opportunities based on capability rather than gender, on demonstrated excellence rather than predetermined limitations. That evening, as the transport aircraft lifted off carrying Maya and her selected team toward their objective in North Africa, she felt a sense of completion. The mission ahead would bring new challenges and dangers, requiring every ounce of skill and judgment she possessed. But the barriers that had once seemed insurmountable had already fallen. Not through demands for equality or changes in policy, but through the undeniable demonstration of capability when it mattered most. A single Marine, facing impossible odds in the mountains of Afghanistan, had changed perceptions more effectively than years of debate and discussion. As the lights of Quantico faded behind them, Maya turned her focus entirely to the mission ahead. Whatever challenges awaited in Libya, she would face them not as a female Marine with something to prove, but simply as a Marine with a job to do, the most meaningful victory of all. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.